Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30, and I call the regular meeting of the Victoria City Council to order. It is our tradition to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda is announcements. In announcements this evening, the council will hold a workshop on Monday, September 26th at 5 p.m. to review and discuss downtown parking data. The council will also hold a workshop on Monday, October 24th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss 2023 legislative priorities. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and held in the council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. We encourage anyone wanting to attend our council meetings or workshops in person to contact our city clerk in advance. In other announcements, the Victoria Farmers Market runs through September 22nd. Please join us on Thursday afternoons from 3 to 6 p.m. in the Lower Enki Brewing parking lot. Volksfest is back and will be held Saturday, September 10th, starting at 2 p.m. and going into the evening. The event will be held downtown Victoria and Enki parking lot, organized by the Victoria Business Association. There will be kids' games, a street market with food trucks, a craft fair, and a big tent with live music, and so much more. So join us on Saturday, September 10th. Also taking place on Saturday, September 10th in the afternoon is the Nordic Music Festival, hosted by the Nordic Heritage Club of Carver County and the Sons of Norway. This free event is open to everyone and celebrates Nordic heritage and culture with music, food, games, crafts, and more. And that festival will be held at Lions Park Pavilion. And last but not least, on behalf of the City Council, I want to extend our appreciation to all of our election judges who served in our primary election, which was held on August 9th. There are no proclamations to be read this evening, so our next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. Council, can I get a motion, please?
Motion to adopt the final agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is our open forum. We do not have anyone who has registered in advance to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council this evening? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and do not require deliberation, or are housekeeping items that are required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull any items from the consent agenda?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Any members of the council would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? And is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull something from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. We are now moving on to our regular agenda. First item on the agenda, item 6.1, is to consider approval of a purchase agreement with Holy Family Catholic High School to purchase land for our new fire station. Presenting this evening is Fire Chief Andrew Hager. Chief, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Before you for consideration tonight is a final purchase agreement related to the future fire station land acquisition. Council participated in a closed session on June 27th and reviewed a draft purchase agreement. And I'll highlight a couple of changes that have been made to that document since, but in front of you this evening is the final purchase agreement for consideration. Again, just a little background on how we got to here. The current fire station is 40 years old in 2022. The build of a new fire station was identified in both the strategic plan and the current space needs assessment. And the deficiencies related to that facility is that it does not support the evolving staffing model and then health and safety considerations that our firefighters are facing today. So the search for land began in January of 2022 when the city engaged the services of Synergy Land Company. I was hoping Brent would join us tonight. He might still poke his head in, but Brent Hislop has been working closely and representing the city on this process. Initially, 7 sites were identified that met size, response time, and access requirements. And again, size, we were looking for approximately at the very minimum 3 acres, but we were hoping to get upwards of that. Response times, obviously, we had a desired response time to maintain. And then access requirements, we were after either a connection to a county road or a state highway, just so we're not, making those connecting routes initially through neighborhoods. So we wanted that. That list quickly dwindled as we got into this for various reasons. Just some of the sites just were not attractive as far as being served with utilities, grading, those types of things. Access to some of the sites was relatively poor. And then we were also competing with residential developers. So a couple of sites that we were interested in were acquired or are under contract through residential development. The site that ultimately rose to the top was located at 8101 Cochia Lane, which is a part of the Holy Family Catholic High School campus today. So the school itself sits on about 74 acres of property, and they are interested in selling a portion of that off. A couple of reasons that really made this site the most attractive. One is the price was well within our budget. Access was what we were hoping for. We could connect to County Road 18, so we could achieve that. And the site is relatively easy as far as the development goes. There's not a lot of grade issues to correct or anything like that. So those are some of the considerations that made this site rather attractive. And of course, it fell within our response time goal. So some highlights related to the purchase agreement since council last viewed it in June. The last draft that you saw was for 5.6 acres. We had some conversations about trying to get an approximately additional 1/3 of an acre to make that connection to County Road 18 better than what it was originally shown. So if you recall, it had a really hard turn at the end of the road at that connection, and that additional 1/3 of an acre would have straightened that out and made it easier. The seller did agree to that, so this has been adjusted now to reflect 6 acres. And that 6 acres will ultimately be determined by a survey. We've got a rough concept of what it looks like, which I'll show you here in a few minutes. That purchase price did increase then to $664,000. That's $44,000 higher than the original draft concept that council viewed in June. And that's specifically related to that additional 1/3 of an acre. With the land purchase, the due diligence items, the broker fees, and closing, we're estimating that total costs are about $699,000. That would be funded through an interfund loan via the sewer fund and then repaid internally over a 10-year period. Another clause that was added is reciprocal first right of refusal. So that gives both the city and Holy Family the option to have basically the first opportunity at purchasing additional property, or if the city, for whatever reason, elected to sell this property down the road, Holy Family would have the first opportunity to buy it back. So where that helps us is if Holy Family decided that we want to sell another 2 acres in the future, the city would have the first opportunity to make the purchase of that land. So that has been included as an appendix to the original purchase agreement. The seller is also looking for the city to make some site enhancements to the water tower site that's directly adjacent to this property. And basically that would just be some screening of some of the existing cell phone utilities that are there today. So their main entrance comes in directly next to our water tower, and there's some facilities and utilities located throughout there that aren't the most attractive as serving as their main entrance. So I think through some landscaping and some trees, we can provide some screening to help dress that up. And then also there would be a leaseback clause in the purchase agreement that allows the Holy Family to continue using the property until such a time that we're ready to actually construct a facility out there. So those are the highlights that have been made to the purchase agreement since council last saw it in June. Next steps, if council elects to approve the purchase agreement this evening, a survey would have to be ordered within 10 days. So again, that survey would identify specifically the property boundaries and what that 6 acres looks like. That would be followed by a phase 1 environmental assessment, wetland delineations, and soil borings. And again, those are all our due diligence items to make sure that the ground can support the building and there's no, garbage dumps or anything like that buried under there. And then also down the road, a minor subdivision process would be necessary, and that would include both hearings at the Planning Commission and the City Council. That would be done really close, if not just after closing, as the seller wishes to not subdivide the property prior to the change in ownership. So, and then closing would be scheduled tentatively for November 30th. We would begin design work in late 2023 with construction in 2025. So the graphic that's up now, I know it's a little tough to see, but that highlights the approximately what 6 acres would look like. And again, this ultimately would be determined via survey. But what this was done, this is just some high-level design work that was done conceptually to ensure that a building can fit on the site. So again, nothing is set in stone as far as this design goes. We just wanted to ensure that that property could accommodate a future facility. As noted in the June meeting, about 3 acres of the property is unusable or unbuildable, either being due to wetlands or there's a pipeline easement that runs through the southwest corner of that property as well. So this, again, just a very high level overview of what a facility could look like and approximate lot lines of what we'd be pursuing.
Chief, could we expand on this site? Is there room to expand beyond what our initial building would look like?
Mayors, members of the council, there's some very limited opportunities for expansion. Now, again, it's really hard to say how that would work until an actual building is laid out. We had a very quick meeting with an architect that we're working with and went through some very high-level space needs, and they came up with an approximate square footage of what that footprint would be, and that's what's reflected in this drawing. There's definitely opportunities to incorporate into design as far as can we go up in certain areas of the building instead of out? So there's definitely things like that to consider.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then just quickly kind of highlighting response times again from this facility. So on the map, kind of in the right side of the ultimate city boundaries, which is highlighted by the black border, that's the ultimate growth area of the city. You'll see the green pin dropped on this site. And basically what I'm showing is that through changes in our staffing model, as far as response time goes, we can cover the 2040 growth area out of this facility. So when I say changes to the staffing model, that means additional duty crew shifts to put people in the station instead of them responding from home. We know that significantly reduces our response time. So through that 2040 process, this facility will serve the growth area, depending on if the residential housing market stays as hot as it is. So, that's obviously a factor, and if we see a significant decline in that may slow this timeline down as far as a second facility. But basically beyond 2040, we'd be looking at a second facility to serve more of that west and southwest growth area. And with that, I will note Brent Hislop from Synergy walked in as well. So if there's any questions for Brent or I related to this, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments, thoughts? This all looks like what we had agreed to, and it looks like it's coming together beautifully. So if there's no further discussion, I will take a motion to approve.
Mayor, I apologize.
Yes.
Should have jumped in 10 seconds earlier. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you to Holy Family and their counsel, who is a lawyer named Paul Schneider, who's at Fafinski, Mark and Johnson. As Chief pointed out, there were quite a few changes, things we had to negotiate in the final purchase agreement, and they were just very good to work with, very easy to work with. And sometimes those things can be difficult, and this was not one of those times at all. So I just want to say that on the record.
Yeah, that's refreshing to hear. Thank you. Great. Yeah.
Good to hear.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Bose. With that, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6.2, we're considering authorization of final design for Downtown West Phase 1 improvements. Presenting on that project this evening is our city engineer, Kara Guerin. Ms. Guerin, welcome. We'll let her get organized.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is another continuation of an item or series of items that we've been working on for quite some time. So at the July council meeting, the City Council awarded a contract for the reconstruction of Steiger Lake Lane from the bridge out to just a little ways into the parcel that will be the parcel that will contain the Anderson apartment building that you provided preliminary plat approval for over the summer as well. So with this project under contract, it is time for our consultant team to turn their attention to the next phase of improvements that are slated to be constructed in 2023. So the area highlighted in yellow, basically in color here, is what we're looking at for the scope of the next phase of improvements that are needed to accommodate the building construction. So the project will include extension of utilities, extension of the streetscape feature and package that was approved with the previous project. Another key piece of the project is construction of the regional stormwater infrastructure. So all the way back to when the council approved a vision for the property, we always envisioned that stormwater management would be provided on a regional basis. So we would have centralized stormwater facilities that would serve the development. So the city does need to construct this stormwater facility to accommodate the runoff that will be generated from the Anderson building. So that is included in the scope. What we aren't including in the scope is a revised connection to Highway 5. We're still over time working through what that exact configuration and connection orientation to 5 needs to be in the context of not just the 13.5 acres. If you recall, the county applied for grant funding for a roundabout to be located at the intersection of 5 and 11, and we're continuing to work through the process of really evaluating what this section of road should consist of, with the access points that are on the south side of the road and all of those elements that factor into it. So this next phase of improvements would just tie into the existing Steiger Lake Lane really as a temporary measure until we are prepared to make a new access onto Highway 5. The Central Green border and boundary is included in the proposed improvements that would be included in this phase. So with authorization, Kimley Horn will further refine this proposed layout and design in conjunction as we're working through the process of the approvals for the Anderson building. So we're kind of working hand in hand. So you might see some modifications to what actually this final layout looks like as the council's moving through approvals of the Anderson building. I think you're going to see that back the end of September. If I have that timeline correctly, is when they'll be submitting a final plat submittal for that project.
I have a question. So are you saying that the Central Green could change again?
Certainly there could be some minor modifications or tweaks here or there as the engineering starts to come to fruition related to grades. I know the parking ordinance is still moving through the process, so that needs to get approved. And so there might be some minor modifications that we would see as these other projects move through their approval process.
So is there a reason that it's in a circle or a semicircle other than all the way up to the property line like the rest of the buildings?
So there's a pretty significant grade change. So this allows us to tie the grades in on this property without having to obtain easements or approvals from the Park District property. The area will slope, you're kind of sitting up on the hill, and the parking area and the Central Green area you want generally to be flat and more usable. So then this space down here will be in its current plan will just be graded to tie in on the property line, so we don't have to obtain any easements from them that we don't anticipate we would receive. But as you start to envision what this space ends up looking like, the city might decide that we would want to construct a retaining wall in this section to add some more kind of flat space at the top with the view sheds. That's pretty consistent with what was in both the DGR plan and then the 2019 plan that got approved. But we have to work through that once we have actual engineering survey and know what the grades are and figure out what all those slopes look like. But generally, staff worked with the consultant with the preliminary design budget that you all had previously approved, and this generally seems like it works from an access and grading perspective.
Okay. Because we're still trying to figure out parking, and the study said that they need 194, and if you had 17 parking spots in the front with their 177 underground, that would cover that. And when I saw the other layout, it was more squared off so that it had more parking. Does this have to be in a circle like that? Can we have 17 parking spots in front of them?
So Mayor, Councilmember Black, that's what I was referring to, that as you all keep working through the process of dealing with the parking ordinance and approval, that will inform what this design looks like. But we do need to get the consultant authorized to start working particularly on the stormwater basin design, because that permitting process is going to have to run concurrently with the building permitting process since we're providing the stormwater treatment for the site. So certainly, I would anticipate that there'll be some minor modifications based on what all input is received related to the parking ordinance and those other issues that the planning department's working on.
Okay, so if we okay this isn't like setting it in stone.
Correct. What we'll end up doing is we're going to try to not have them start work, particularly on that part of the process, until
We figure out
the parking ordinance is resolved. Generally, we try to do what we can to avoid rework on these projects. Sometimes you have no choice because you've got to try to get everything on the right construction schedule. But what we've talked about is the most important thing is getting Kimley-Horn authorized to complete the stormwater management plan. And they'll just make some assumptions about an impervious surface that aren't going to vary wildly from what might come forward.
Okay.
Got it. Helps if I try the right computer. So this is just a blow up of the same slide, but the estimated fees and summary of what we're seeking authorization for Kimley-Horn is outlined here. And that has a total estimated fees and expense of just under $160,000. This is all consistent with the $4 million that you have in the CIP and the long-term financial plan associated with this project. So these fees are within that $4 million. When we get an updated estimate for this, we'll be revisiting that $4 million budget to make sure whether we have to make any modifications. Certainly that information will come forward once we get into this next phase of design. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions, concerns, comments? This all looks again
I
to
asked
be
my questions.
this all looks again to be in line with what we've been talking about for a long time, and so I think
We're all right.
if there's no other discussion, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize Kimley-Horn to provide professional services for the Downtown West Phase 1 Public Infrastructure Improvements Project.
I have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. There are no more items on our regular agenda this evening, so we'll move on to reports and emerging issues. Attorney Vos, any reports from you?
Thanks, Mayor. I do not.
Ms. Hardy, how about anything from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Council members, anything from council?
Not today.
Okay. There are no more items to come before the body this evening, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
We have a motion
Second?
and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and we stand adjourned. Good night.